Hello, everybody. We are live. We're back for another CTO Craft Bytes. We are going to be talking about how to work with teams and engineers that may be a little bit more resistant to the implementation of AI in their workflows. Why it's something that needs to be treated quite carefully, quite sensitively, but also how to make sure that the team comes out the other side more efficient and happier, and morale stays high. We're here with Carol Palombini, who is an executive coach, a leadership consultant, and a psychologist who helps leaders accelerate career growth, visibility, and influence. Welcome, Carol. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here. Carol is also a member of our community committee, so you may have seen her name and face around Slack if you're a member. If you're not a member, do go to ctocraft.com/community. You can find out how to join there. It's free to join. We would love to have you there if you're in a technology leadership role. With all that said, let's dive in. So as I say, we are going to be talking about AI resistance and AI readiness. Let's jump in. So let's talk about the elephant in the room here, which is that every coach and every consultant and every technology leader in the world right now is trying to put some kind of shape around how AI is going to help develop software and build software, when in reality everything is still in flux, isn't it? So yeah.
Please go on.
I was just interested to hear how you're finding this in conversations with some of your clients, how they're sort of balancing that ambiguity and that kind of flux with actually making changes and implementing this stuff.
Yes, the most interesting pattern I find is uncertainty. It's people looking for some kind of certainty. So the roundtable discussions I'm hosting usually led to only one common conclusion, is that there is no certainty. There is not a defined vision of what the future will be. And that level of uncertainty is actually breaking some leaders down. They are super lost without knowing what to do once you don't have the right and wrong scale to actually measure things. And so when they start discussing this, instead of discussing actually implementation, they go back a lot of steps to discuss whether that's worth taking the risk, if it's still worth adopting AI. So there are different attitudes that I see among CTOs, among senior tech leaders, that does not really much align with what you read in articles about what a CTO should be or how they should be behaving. So the reality is messier than what we've been reading around.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. You know, there's no shortage of non-technology people, you know, espousing all these productivity gains and improvements and everything, you know, the whole development life cycle crunching and getting smaller. But for the people on the playing field, they still see the ambiguity and the rate of change and that kind of thing. And, you know, from my experience chatting with people, it's quite obvious when that filters down to the individual contributors as well. You know, if you're in the leadership role, you're kind of the rudder for how the team reacts to certain changes and certain flux. So yeah,
it's everyone is saying this is about change management. In the end, you have had experience with that. You've implemented a new technology. People resist. So why should this be different? But on my point of view, this is completely different. This is a new change management. Although the practices of change management still will apply, and the old school leadership getting closer, empathizing with these people, listening to the teams and understanding what they fear is still very important. But now we are not just talking about going out of the comfort zone and changing the tools you use to work with. Now we are talking about an identity threat. So put yourself in the position of an engineer right now. Some leaders, they have been leaders for a long time. Sometimes they are too far from these feelings. So reading articles from developers or memes on the internet, you can understand what probably your team is not saying directly to you. Some people are afraid to be misplaced, to be made redundant, and not because they won't pick up on AI, but because maybe they don't feel that that's worth it. Maybe they don't feel that that's the career path they're interested in anymore. So part of this resistance comes from, am I still interested in being a coder or an engineer once everything is done by AI? And I believe some people will say no to that. Some people will not be more interested anymore in working with coding because it's not that challenging intellectually anymore. And other people that were not interested in the field may come and start a new profile of people, of coders and developers will show up on this. So we are talking about someone that suddenly feels they're losing their value. It's not just about using a new tool. It's much more than that. These people are, especially tech minds, they usually tend to be very connected, to connect their value to their craftsmanship, to what they do. And if you take that away from them, they feel they lost their identity. So this is wider than just resisting a new tool.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? As technology leaders, we have a bit of experience with that, right? Because obviously we've had to reframe our identity and accept that it's further away from actual development and implementation of stuff. So we have that bit of insight that maybe we can bring to some of these discussions, some of these tensions.
You brought an excellent point, because if you put yourself in their place, you will find a moment that you probably felt the same way. And why not saying that, communicating that? Another pattern that I've been seeing around AI adoption is on the leader side is that I don't want to be the bad guy. I don't want to be the person who is going to let go thousands of people, and being stuck. This type of resistance is hindering their ability to actually think about AI adoption. This is the forefront, like in a Gestalt, like the picture, not the background. So they cannot go over this and be effective in thinking ways of adopting that in the best way possible, because they're still struggling with their role in this change.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, you know, some technology leaders who are in the field while this is going on are probably still in that transition themselves. They may be quite early on in their career, so it's doubly hard.
But you know what? I think that people that early on the CTO career might have a bit of advantage now with what executives firms are actually looking for in a CTO. Because now you will have to have like the ideal CTO profile now. It's a perfect blend between business acumen and business language and being AI savvy, actually understanding and actually being the person who actually builds it. Not everything, but they are searching for people that does not just delegate, but actually use it and like it. So the coders that were using and adopting and now are stepping into the CTO role might still have all that experience with coding closer to the development. While other CTOs that were asked to be more strategic, more business-oriented, are resisting in a way because they feel like maybe they can't catch up with AI anymore. Maybe they are too far from technology and they are feeling threatened. And I see another pattern of AI resistance that I'm not even going to discuss this because this shouldn't be happening. This AI shouldn't be happening. So there's still this type of mindset that's still struggling with the ethics of thing and didn't move on from this discussion yet.
Absolutely. I'm going to create a quick poll for the audience.
Great.
To see whether they feel endangered by AI in the same way that some of their ICs might be. just be interested to get a view. But also, I just wanted to say, if anybody has any questions for me or Carol, do use the Q&A part on the right hand side. You'll see a little speech bubble with a question mark in it. If you ask questions, we can pop them up on screen and get through them. But also, we'd just love to hear in the chat what your experience has been, either as a leader or with your ICs. I think that would be great to see. But yeah, Carol, I was going to ask, in the conversations that you've had with people who are seeing this resistance within their teams, are there patterns to the kind of pushback that they're getting? Is it around kind of mistrust of the current tooling that we have, or is it, as we said before, is it more of an identity crisis? Have you seen patterns there?
Yeah, the identity crisis is what underneath, but behavior, that what you can see, the signs that you can actually look for in your teams are more of like a reluctance to use this on their own, like a completely lack of curiosity around the tool and ways of working. And also another thing that they might be resisting is because of the load. So as agentic AI speed up production, there's something that you cannot scale, which is human attention. So there's a mismatch between these two things, like the amount of work that's coming now for engineers, for coders, and the amount of decisions that had to be made. And they are still not aligned. Leaders are not close enough to this reality to better align this workflow. So resistance comes from not using it, or only when it's mandatory, not taking part in discussions about this, and not lack of curiosity. I think the worst is a complete lack of curiosity of how AI could help improve work and do whatever you think could be done automatically.
Do you, or in your conversations with these people, are there any patterns in the type of engineers who push back more than others?
I think no one has noticed this, but from the conversations that I have, what I usually see is that they say that it doesn't work. So it's more work for me. It's not, you're saying, like, leadership is saying that I am going to be more productive, that I'm not going to do the things that I don't like to do, and then we'll just but they are lying to me, because I know that what I'm doing will replace my work. So that lack of communication, of transparency, and sometimes that's not even true. Sometimes that's not the intention of the leader. But if that's not clearly communicated in all of these words, we are not going to replace you, or this is the replacement, this is the future of this role, and how do you find yourself, how do you think you fit in this new role? So these conversations are not being had. So that is the main problem. Leaders are too task-oriented at this time and focused on implementing the workflows and the processes, but they are not listening enough to the teams to understand what's happening to them.
Right. There's also a question here of psychological safety in general, isn't there? You know, obviously some of these ICs feel comfortable enough to push back and to resist this stuff, but it feels like there probably should have been a bit more safety earlier on in the process. You know, you'd get a bit of foresight on who might push back or who might be challenged by some of these new things.
Yeah, but at the same time, I empathize with tech leaders now, because it's hard to be a CTO in these times. It's really hard, because on one end, you're being super pressured by CEOs and board members who actually don't know what they're talking about most of the time, and demand things that are mainly impossible. And CTOs are having to spend a lot of energy trying to convince these people and show and convince them, influence into the best direction of AI. And there's little time to pay attention to the teams. That's what I'm feeling. The main concern is still like negotiating this type of what is going to be done, the expectations that can be delivered and the expectations that are impossible to be delivered on. And there's little time to pay attention to the teams. And you can be losing important talent because you're not, unfortunately, you have to find a way of doing both.
Yeah. You know what? I think that's so true for all the hopeful productivity gains and the new approaches and so on. It's an incredible time suck. And I think that we don't pay enough attention to how much technology leaders are having to pull themselves away from stuff they might be usually doing around team and culture and planning and strategy so that they can get AI into the,
And probably with the same budget, because some of my clients are telling me that now they can't hire anyone anymore. Like they can't hire a manager, they can't hire an AC, even if they lost someone, because they have to make it better with AI. Just that. That's the mandate. It didn't come with any clarity around what we believe AI can do, of what is the measurements that we are trying to achieve. They are asking directors or senior managers to just, figure it out. Figure it out how you're going to make this more productive with AI and less people and the same budget.
Yeah. And again, as technology leaders, part of our role is shielding the individual contributors from some of these strategic pressures and pressures from non-technical parts of the business. So that's an additional load on us as well. Yes,
and not just be the person who says, I can do this. There's another tech mind trait that might get in the way of a good AI adoption and remove these resistance, is that if they ask me to do something, I'll do it because I'm excellent. So it takes on more work, it takes on more responsibility instead of negotiating. So I have not been seeing this attitude as I like to. It's not pushing back. It's just saying, okay, I understand what you need, but here's how I propose we get to where you want to be. This is how more of a proactive attitude into proposing what you believe is the best path for the company, taking a more consulting approach to the board. And this feels like the future of anyone who wants to be the authority on AI in their company, whatever they call you, chief AI officers, the CTO, the CIO, whatever. It's that you will have to be the orchestrator of the other C-levels in terms of AI adoption. So you have to stop trying to prove yourself right in your arguments and start proposing things in business acumen language.
Yeah. Daniel makes a really good comment in the really good point in the comments as well. And we were talking about how AI is kind of consuming the CTO's focus and energy away from cultural and psychological safety type stuff. It's also drawing us away from risk management and compliance and that kind of thing as well. That's something I think is going to...
Yeah, and you still have to learn it. You still have to find time to actually use it the best way, research how other people are doing. So this is kind of an impossible mandate. So that's why I'm saying this is the time to renegotiate this with the CEO, to explain the expectations that can be matched. And we already have some data. Mm-hmm. From other companies. So now you can bring something that you know can work. So this is my proposal. This is how we're going to measure. These are the risks that I expect that to have. And this is the pilot that we can do. Because another thing that I've been noticing doing this rollout, like Volkswagen is now rehiring senior engineers because they had let go all the senior engineers. So that doesn't make any sense. And what happened to piloting things? Mm-hmm. What happened to trying things out? So there's the completely lack of psychological safety, and especially challenger safety, when engineers know that a new thing is going to be rolled out for the entire company, for all of the clients, without any room for mistake.
Absolutely. So let's say we're in a position where we're being pressured by the board or the CEO or the CFO or whoever to do AI, and we go back to them with a pilot proposition where would we go about finding relevant data, given what we said earlier on, that everything is still in flux and everything's going on? What sort of sources?
I can put on, please reach out to me. I can send the links to these research, but Deloitte has already released a very good research with tech leaders from all over the world, but from big companies over 1 billion. So they usually set up the trends of what's working and what's not working. And IBM also released a very good report on this. So I can put those in the link, and I'm constantly talking about it. I'm going to start posting also about this in partnership with the CTO Craft, so you can all understand what's going on and what's being expected from senior level executives in tech. Because I don't like to frame it and close it in titles. Titles are moving now. Some people say CIO will merge with CTO. Some people say that the CIO will become the chief AI officer. Some say is the CTO. Some say it's going to be another role above all of those. But they all say in one thing in common. If you want to hold the strategic part of AI adoption, then you will have to be the one that set the cards and propose. Because usually the CEO won't be able to do this. So you have to orchestrate the C-suite.
Absolutely, yeah. Which is a completely new part of the CTO job, isn't it? I suppose that in the past we've had paradigm shifts like smartphones and crypto and cloud computing. AWS, where all these things have come through, and especially cloud computing, for example. I remember way back in the day, in my first CTO role back in whatever it was, 2006, and AWS came out maybe a couple of years into that CTO role, and I suddenly was getting a huge amount of pressure to migrate everything and have that flexibility and so on and so forth. And I had to build, in my first CTO role, it's sort of a business case for why we shouldn't do it at that point, but might want to do it further down the line. And it feels like this is the same situation again. So it's almost a cyclic thing that comes up every few years. There's a new paradigm. But maybe when we're talking to new CTOs about what the role means and what it is, we should be building in some of these understandings about the cyclical nature of these new technologies coming out and how they will need to build business cases for and against them. Trying to sell non-technical people on the risks and the dangers, and the fact that they've seen a bunch of stuff on YouTube doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for the company, and et cetera, et cetera. It's a whole new thing.
And I think that resistance comes from everywhere, and CEOs are also resisting the no's that CTOs are giving, right? This is the whole resistance field. And how can you influence these CEOs? Because in the end, that's the big challenge. Either if you are the CTO in your company, or if you're looking for a job as a CTO, it's the CEO you have to talk to. Is that person? That person will have to want to work with you and want to delegate this level of decision making to you. So it's about building trust with the CEOs, and there's also empathizing what they are going through, with the pressures they are under. So asking openly about this is super important, either if you are in an interview or if you are employed. Have you considered asking your CEO what pressures are they under, and what are their biggest fear? Because in the end, resistance comes from fear. Everyone fears something. So if you can immediately address that fear and say, okay, I'm afraid that competition will quickly overcome our product because we don't have whatever they're building. So you know how to answer that. You won't be working on something completely different to prove yourself right or prove your point that is not going to address the main point of concern from the CEO.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's trying to get that balance right between resistance because of fear of missing out and sort of being left in the past by the non-technical people, and the fear of creating a crazy work environment for themselves from the individual contributors that they don't have control over and they don't know, and it's not in their experience. That's
exactly. They don't know. And you see these jobs. I love this because you see job descriptions for CTOs that were made by the CEO, probably himself, and he wants several things. But in the end, he's hiring someone to tell him how to do that, to tell him how to adopt. So I wouldn't take those job descriptions as a yes or no thing. If you are looking for the job description and you think it fits, and you think, okay, the problem they have, I can deliver, but I don't have these experiences or these technical background they're asking for, but I don't believe this is necessary. It's your job to pitch your solution to them, to say, okay, I understand that you need someone to develop your product, to update your product to using AI because your competition is doing the same. But this is the path that I believe will take you there. And I don't need all this, but I have this extra stuff that can help you get there.
And this is what you should reasonably expect as an outcome.
This is what you should reasonably expect. This is how we are going to measure it. This is how we are going to know if we are on the right track before everything implodes.
We've got some good questions coming in already. We've got one from James here. Bring it up on screen. Which is harder to tackle, indifference or refusal? So I think we're talking specifically about ICs rather than CEOs. But what do you think of that?
Honestly, I think is indifference. First of all, because it's difficult to see. It's difficult to actually see if you're not paying real attention. But refusal, the person still wants to be part, but he wants to be heard. That person wants to be heard. So it's about listening to them deeply and actively, not listening to respond to saying that they're right, but just listen to them and say, okay, I understand your concern, confirm their concern. Sometimes just being listened to can remove the refusal completely. But indifference or lack of curiosity means that person might not be interested in being an engineer anymore. Like it happens with marketing experts. Before social media, marketing was completely different. It was a completely different role. And some people, some professionals, after the implementation, after the social media became the thing in marketing, they even tried it, but they lost interest. That was not what they had studied for, that the passion that they had was completely gone when they had to work on social media. So we have also to empathize with these people. They have the right to be upset that they're losing the interest in something that they used to love. They're losing a passion. So for these people, I think the best thing you can do is offer some career coaching. Actually, the faster they get to the conclusion if it's still worth it or not, the better for them, the better for the company.
Yeah. And that's even harder to do when we don't know as leaders where things are going to be in a year. It's really tough. But yeah, it brings back that dreaded term, quiet quitting as well. I do wonder whether we're going to see a lot more people just silently giving up rather than actively taking a step to move out of the technology field because they dislike what they perceive the future as being, which obviously, yeah.
And because of the lack of leadership, this case I told you about, people just saying like, figure it out. It's happening too much. In reality, what we've seen is like, figure out how to do this with AI better. And it's exhausting. They are exhausted. They always felt like, I'm knowledgeable. Tech people always love to be knowledgeable. And then they suddenly say, I can't keep up. This is impossible. Because the leaders are not saying, okay, you have to learn specifically this to solve this.
Yeah, yeah. It's a really good question, James. Thanks for asking that.
Thank you, James.
So what about reasons why individual contributors push back? We've spoken a bit about kind of the rate of change of the technologies themselves and the identity part of it. Are there any other reasons that you've heard in the conversations you've had with leaders as to why developers are resistant, why they push back?
Well, I think that so we have three reasons so far. We have the resistance because they felt like an identity crisis. They're losing their value. You have the resistance because of the workload. So they're resisting because they think, okay, this is going to be worse for me. I had a good life and now my life gotten worse after AI adoption. And I see ethical resistance. There is the ethical on the IC side as well. So this should not be happening, especially on Gen Z. Gen Z is really pushing against AI adoption. I don't know if you saw some of graduation ceremonies in the United States, people booing the speakers because they were talking about the future with AI. So that's very symbolic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
of the level of acceptance, people feeling that I am being mandated this. I didn't choose this, but I will have to work with this because otherwise I'll be invisible.
Yeah. So there's the cultural and the societal opposition in some parts to AI as a concept, and there's definitely something to be said about the environmental impacts, and everyone's talking about data centers and the amount of resources they're using. Yeah, so there's that pushback as well, I guess. So it's not necessarily about how it affects the self, but how it affects society as a whole and the environment and the world. So that's definitely something.
And this generation is much more conscious and aware of these issues because they are feeling, in the environmental part especially, the problems that this caused and that the social media caused without any type of regulation. So there's a lot of things about need for government also to regulate things because they're feeling vulnerable in all this.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. Let's look at another question. We've got a good one here from Vesna. Hello, Vesna. Good to see you. As organizations adopt AI, where do you most often see leaders over-communicating or under-communicating with engineering teams? That's an interesting one. I think for me, it's partly around something we were talking about earlier on, which is our vulnerability in our roles. And we've got a poll running as well. We're going to look at the poll in a bit. And, maybe we under-communicate the fact that all the answers aren't there for us as leaders yet. And so maybe they look to us to have all the answers about how it might work, where we don't necessarily have that. I don't know if you've seen anything like that, Carol.
Yeah, I think the problem is not communicating. I think they are communicating the needs, the goals, what we have to achieve, trying to dim down the pressure. But they're not communicating the vision. The vision is, although you cannot create a perfect vision of how the future will look like after AI adoption, you can build a vision of building this together, of the how we are going to get there. So you can tell your team that we are the ones that are going to get this right because I'm listening to you. So I think that the task-oriented mindset from tech people usually deals with the right or wrong. If I don't have the perfect thing, I don't have anything. So instead of focusing on the delivery, on what the product would look like, what the workflow will look like, you can see a future where people are building things together, a more people-oriented vision. Yeah. So I think that they're not communicating well the how we are going to go through this tsunami of information, of change.
I think that's it. I think partly, so in conversations I've had where they're facing kind of issues generally, they're not really communicating the why very well. Obviously, the why can't be because the CEO said we need to do it. And it can't be just because we don't want to miss out. We don't want to be uncompetitive. There needs to be a more tangible reason for doing it that isn't just business and commercial related in order for it to be a motivator for the engineers and in order for it not to freak them out, right? Because remember, these are people who have spent years and years building up skills. They're software craftsmen. They have some pride in the way they're doing it, and they need to know that the reasons for bringing in this huge new paradigm that completely overwhelms everything else is actually going to benefit them in the long term and, make things easier and better. So the why needs to be focused on the outcome
the benefits
and the benefits of having AI within the life cycle, not just everyone else is doing it.
And also for their careers. So the benefit could, when you're talking to a person that feels threatened on their end as a professional, you cannot just talk about benefits to the company and to the product. You have to address the personal benefits. So this is important because you're going to be ahead of the competition, because we are going to work on this. We are going to do trial and errors, because you're going to have a voice and you can put in your resume that you were part of building this new process or this new workflow or this new prompt, whatever. So the thing is, going back to tech leaders not wanting to be the bad people, the bad boss, they don't agree. That's the problem. They're not saying the why, because in the end, they don't agree with the why.
Right.
So unless they make peace with that and understand really to open this conversation, and the community is here for this. So one of the great opportunities, like the CTO Craft has a Slack community, go there, schedule one-on-one with other CTOs and ask them how they are handling this. So in practice, to understand how people are handling this dilemma, because the dilemma is hindering communication. If you're not sure that that's beneficial, and this I've seen clearly throughout the roundtables and the clients I'm talking to, is they don't see the benefit for the teams. So that's why they're not communicating, because in the end, they feel like a phony.
Right. Mm. Yeah, it would be interesting to do some kind of poll within the community to see who's confident that they understand what outcomes they're driving towards with AI adoption, and how many don't.
It's the dark future, and a complete lack of positive outlook it's the domain thing now among most tech leaders that are disturbed with this. So either you have a pragmatic point of view and you love AI and you're just digging in, or you are lost in questions, in ethical questions, and seeing this dark vision of a future that they cannot hide from the team as well. Mm-hmm. So it can be even like contaminating to the rest of the team.
Yeah, absolutely. We are the team's rudder, and we need to be aware of that. That's a great question. Thanks, Vesna. So let's talk about actions we can take. So let's say we're in a team, the CEO or the board or whoever has made this request, in inverted commas, that the team needs to implement AI within their development lifecycle in order to see productivity gains X, Y, and Z over however many months. And you have a team that is efficient, they're putting out code very well, and they are resistant to changing the ways that they're currently creating software, purely to sort of appease the AI gods, I've heard said. But what would be your first action there? How would you first approach that?
I like to use the devil's advocate strategy. I've talked about that during my talk in Berlin last year, and I think that that's very effective. So giving the mandate to criticize, you really want to listen. You don't want to speak back or to justify. You just have to let them talk. There's something that when we have a big concern or a big fear, it's like a cloud in front of your eyes. You cannot see anything past that unless someone blows that away. So addressing the issue, let them state their concerns, because sometimes when you state the concern and write them down, it already loses its power. People say, okay, because there are ways of handling this. So you should list all the concerns they have and try to address those in terms of how can we minimize the impact, the negative impact. What are the negative impacts? Because sometimes they're concerned with things that have very little impact.
Mm-hmm. And may not happen at all.
May not have any at all. Some of them you can minimize, some of them can work around, you can have a strategy, but they need to feel heard and they need to know their concerns are being addressed.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that's the starting point. And then you will also see who's just resistant to resist and who is actually concerned about something that could be even very important, because sometimes they are really concerned about specific clients or specific parts of the process that you're not totally aware of.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I think also important to say, not specific to this subject, but when you're trying to get honest feedback from the team, it's important to do that kind of active listening, free thinking, sort of drawing on post-it notes and sticking up concerns and that kind of thing, both in a group setting and in an individual setting. So you get the response of a group consciousness as a whole, but then you might get closer to getting some truth out of the people who might be quiet quitting, as we said before. So important to do both if you can, in one-to-ones and then in group retros or whatever you're going to do it in. Yeah.
And then after that, okay, so you remove the cloud. So this is a way of removing the cloud and make it like building readiness. That's what we have to talk about, like how do you build this readiness? So first of all, is addressing fear, removing the fear, not being afraid of confrontations. You don't have to have the answers to them. You just have to listen and work together in minimizing those. After that is building a vision together. Mm-hmm. Building a vision with the team. The leader doesn't have to deliver a vision to the team. They have to build it together. So it's like building the pieces of what is it that we want to go this way? What exactly is the positive outlook for us in 6 months? You don't even have to go that far. You can do something in 6 months. What does it mean that we are an excellent engineering team?
Absolutely. Having some measures as well, I think helps, Sure. Quite difficult to make a direct comparison against where we are today as an engineering team and where we are 2 months, 6 months, 12 months down the line once we've started implementing the AI stuff, if you're not tracking productivity and cycle times and that kind of thing along the way. I think that's really important.
Exactly, because someone I think it was Daniel, sent a very interesting article from a developer talking about decision fatigue because of the speed of agentic AI. And this amazing article even includes ways how this developer is handling that. He found strategies on his own that he could share with everyone else. And that can happen also in your team, but maybe they are not as good as communicators. They're not going to post an article, and you will never know unless you ask them how they're dealing with that. So one thing I did with my clients, I'd send this article to them for them to send it to their teams and talk it over. So bring an article as a point of discussion, so people don't feel like vulnerable or in the spotlight to say whatever is troubling them. So you can bring something like, I've seen this happening in the market. I've heard this is happening also. Do you also feel it like here? So you're not the only ones. This is happening everywhere. We need to discuss it.
Yeah, absolutely. Grand. Let's have a look at the poll that we put up. Yeah. So we had 16 votes, of which 11 said no, they don't feel personally concerned about AI affecting their roles, which is nice. And then 5 who said, so roughly a third, said that they are worried about AI affecting your jobs. I think that's a pretty good state of the tech leadership universe at the moment. I think it's just the uncertainty and the lack of clarity on where things are going to land, if they ever land. This is the kind of paradigm shift where we may never have a perfect, replicable kind of set of processes that work for every team. That's something else we need to bear in mind.
I think that there's not going to be a single right way. It's going to be the philosophy that matters. So what's my philosophy with AI adoption? So is it going to replace, augment, or is it important to all establish the workflows first? So there's a lot of things to be established in terms of philosophy, but it's like going to be think global and act local. It's going to be like that. You're going to have to, first of all, the quality of data your company has, everything changes from company to company. But the leaders that will thrive are the ones that see this as an opportunity, because it is an opportunity as well. Because when you have a very messy scenario, it's the time for you to propose. Mm-hmm. So the ones who will win this race and safeguard their jobs is the one that's willing to propose how is the best way to work with AI for that specific company, for that specific CEO.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think Charity Majors from Honeycomb put out a really interesting article this week on similar subjects, and she pointed out something really important here, which is that the need for great architecture in building systems is going to increase with the advent of AI in the workflows. It's not going to decrease. That's something that is going to become all the more important, because verifying code that gets generated is not quite as easy as verifying code that your colleagues have written, right? So architecture becomes all the more important. And that's actually quite a good selling point, I think, to senior engineers who are resistant to this stuff, who might think it's just going to be a bunch of unfiltered Claude spitting out code ad infinitum. We can say to them, no, it's not going to be like that. We need more architectural principles to be solid and looked after in this in order to make this work. I think maybe that's a universal constant.
Yeah, and also smaller bites, smaller sprints. Even if the AI can do everything in a bunch, you cannot check that. You cannot check. You have to cut it in pieces so you can check and understand which piece went wrong. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. So having the ability, it's a workflow and a process mindset, and also metacognition. So people who actually invest in communication in ways that you can explain your thinking process, or if you can get your senior engineer to do that, you'll get leverage. You will be closer to what AI is, the future of AI is like, actually being very clear and explaining how to get from input A to output C.
Yeah, absolutely. This actually relates quite well to a question from Steve, which might be cut off. It's quite a long question on here. So I've come across senior ICs who don't even like using frameworks. So the super purists, let alone AI. That's a really tough one, isn't it? So essentially, if you can't get an engineer to even use any kind of formulated approach or a sort of a platform or a framework, how are you going to get them to trust the code coming out of an AI tool? Really tough. Really tough. Any thoughts, Carol?
Well, these people usually are kept in companies because they hold the knowledge. Right. And usually they think that the value is that they hold the knowledge. So if they have this mindset, they will not adopt AI because they think that their value is whatever they know and that they are not replaceable. But of course, this is a huge problem because as Steve mentions here, it's bad for the rest of the team. It's not a good example. So it's a very tricky thing. You have to understand what's the actual value that this person is bringing in and how can you build a team that will compensate if they decide to just quit. Because I've seen companies that did something like this. They had a very star engineering, but he was a very difficult person to work with. Mm-hmm. So what did we do? We put him as a consultant. He was going to work from home, deliver on specific things, but they wouldn't interact with the team. So you're still valuable. We love the way you work. You're not going to change. This isn't a choice. The person has the right to make this choice, So, but this is how we're going to handle you then. Then you're going to deliver whatever we asked you to, and we have to build the team around a new way of working.
Yeah. I think probably most of us have come across someone who is irreplaceable in the team, who's quite difficult to work with quite often because they know they're irreplaceable and they're the pool of domain knowledge. You know, I think our response to someone like that around not wanting to use AI is probably no different than them not wanting to use a framework, because essentially these are productivity but also collaboration questions. And if they're not able to own their productivity and improve how they collaborate and communicate with other parts of the team and how their work fits in with the other part of the team, then no amount of domain knowledge is really going to support that person affecting the rest of the team in those ways. So yeah, I think I'd probably agree with you, Steve, that possibly not a future for them in the long run. Maybe in fixing all the AI problems 20 years down the line, we shall see. But for now, yeah, a lot of pushback. Yeah. Let's have another look at a question. Okay, we've got a good one from Carlo here, which is a very kind of hands-on specific one. What are good strategies to cross the chasm from early adopters to mainstream and engineering organizations? We're doing the same, the classic things: AI champions, training, hackathons. What other approaches have you seen leaders take within their teams to try and improve the uptake or the interest in AI?
Well, I think the ones that are doing exactly the champions, the train, and the reward. Some people forget about the rewards. The first thing that I check whenever they hire me as a consultant is to check what they're rewarding. We cannot expect people to go after and change behavior if they're not going to be rewarded for that. So that means money. No, of course not. You don't want to create any kind of money situation. It's more about praising people out loud for behaviors that you want them to have, or for bringing a new idea, or roundtables within your team to exchange practices. So whatever you figured out and you want to share with the team, a new way of doing this, a new tool that you figured out, a new way to talk to the client about this, whatever it is, the challenge. But I think it's actually putting people together, because hackathons put people like in a competitive mode, which I like. I think it has its advantages. Training people are a little bit fed up, I think. But I think that very few teams are actually working on talking it over, on having opportunities to discuss. So reward, I would say, find a way to reward the behaviors that you want them to perform, and also put them to talk.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah. I think also something that sprung to mind as you were saying that, Carol, is understanding the motivations of engineers, which is a whole Bytes session in itself, I think. But understanding what people actually want, because they're not all motivated by the same things. So, training might motivate some people within your team because it's nice having qualifications. What is it? The CCAF? Can't remember what it's called. The Claude Code Advanced. There are a whole bunch of new acronyms and new qualifications, and some people are really motivated by those. Some people will be motivated by the productivity gains. Some people will be motivated by being seen as advocates and champions and kind of the smartest person in the room and that kind of thing. So I think it's about talking to individuals.
Yeah. But usually tech minds, they are motivated by being knowledgeable and recognized. So it give a lot of training, but you don't recognize their effort or what they're bringing back. It's not going to be that effective. So usually tech minds like compliance, very high stability in their personality profiles means that stability, they want a framework. They want something that's to be delivered, at least for a while, to be tested and used. This unclarity, absolute unclarity to handle and deal with it. This is the worst, I think. The demotivator.
Absolutely. Yeah. The ambiguity, as you say, can be a real killer in teams. So, yeah. Good one, Carly. Thanks for that. I hope that helps. Any more questions? We've got 5 minutes left. Let's do one more question, and then we'll see where we are. Okay, we've got one here from Gary. This is an interesting one. Are we already seeing the reversal of an aggressive AI rollout, or is it just media hype? Times are still changing, but maybe it's about to change or slow. That's a really interesting one. I think from my perspective, I can see things changing for the better or for the worse. Over the next 12 months, I think we're going to see a lot more focus on locally hosted AI rather than relying on some of the big providers. I think I don't think it's a bubble necessarily, but I think it's held together with sticky tape a little bit, that whole industry. And, once the tooling starts to change, that's going to change the engineering culture around it for sure. So, I do think we're going to have to expect that some of the processes and some of the implementations that we're putting into teams based on the current set of tooling probably will change. And that's going back to the beginning of this session. We were talking about, the fact that it's very hard for us to pilot new things when we don't know what it's going to look like a year down the line. But I see it flexing. I do see it pulling back at some point. But that's
Me too. That's a guess, because it's something that I see now. CTOs are pushing back. They were like, first of all, like, how can I do all of that? And now they say, okay, no, I can't. Let's roll this back and let's manage expectations. So the ones that can do this will be seen as an authority on the field and will be trusted to push back. And the ones that are just trying to comply with whatever it is are going to be responsible when it doesn't go right.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Grand. Thanks for that, Gary. Okay, that is about all the time we have for today. Thank you so much, Carol. That's been a really interesting conversation.
Thank you. It was really fun, like always. And everyone, if you really want the references, just reach out to me at the Slack on CTO Craft or LinkedIn, Carol Palombini, and I'll send you the references.
There we go. I'll just put Carol's LinkedIn profile into the chat there. So if you'd like to catch up with Carol, please do. Also, very happy to announce that Carol is going to be leading the show at our Amsterdam conference at the end of September. Still lots of time to pick up a ticket. I think the ticket prices are going up fairly soon though. So we're reaching the end, I think, of our early bird tickets. So if you would like to come and meet us both, we're both going to be there. Please do click on the Join Us in Amsterdam link there, or go to ctocraft.com. You'll find the conference details there, but we would love to see you. We've got some great people there. Randy Shoup, ex-eBay, Google, whoever else is going to be on stage. It's going to be fantastic. And hopefully still warm.
Hopefully.
Touch wood. But other than that, lovely to see you all. If you would like to join Slack, if you're not already there, just go along to ctocraft.com and it'll explain how to get set up. But that's us. Thanks again, Carol.
Thank you. And I hope to see you all in Amsterdam. Bye-bye.
Good stuff. Thank you, everyone. See you later.